Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. In today's episode we will be covering the part 2 of the tier list playlist of Gambits for player playing black pieces. Yesterday a first part was published in which I covered the 1e4 e5 Gambits. If you are interested in those or you haven't watched it, please check it out because not only there are Gambits there but I also explain how do I do the tier playlist. And if you know what do you want to watch and it's this exact episode, I guess the further introduction is useless. Let's just jump straight into the video. And with that, we can go into yet another next gambit, which is the Portuguese one for all the Portuguese players. How is it played? Well, you start with the Scandinavian, so d5. However, you don't go for the immediate recapturing of the pawn, but you go for the knight f6 variation that I covered in the opening section too. But in the opening section, I said that after d4, the idea is to take the pawn. In the Portuguese gambit, it's not the idea because it's to play bishop g4. And before looking this gambit up, before recording this video, I thought that it's practically much better than I think now, because it's really not that great, to be honest. Because first of all, white can simply say that they don't care and start developing normally. And in this variation, you will be getting simply the Scandinavian defense. So like, what's the point of gambiting if the gambit is not on the board? Not only that, if white is willing to accept the gambit and they will try to kick away the bishop, our idea with this move was in general to try to, grab those pawns, like make them push forward and forward, create plenty of weaknesses. But the more I look at this position, the more I feel like white is simply maybe winning. Okay, it's the main line. Okay, white had to know a lot of those moves, but if they know that f3 is the move, they will perhaps for sure play g4. Then trying to protect the pawn is also a simple task. Once more you will do it, and then finding the moves like g5 and grabbing the pawn is not that hard. And even if that's not the case, white is still okay here. So I would say that I had much higher hopes for the Portuguese gambit, but yeah, it's just not working as well as I would like it to. And for that reason, I am not really sure where to put it. Surprise weapon, well, it's not that great surprise. White can deal with it. Single trick, what's the trick there? So, yeah, let's put it there. Maybe I will change my mind up because there are plenty of bad gambits coming on. But nevertheless, as of now, that's the place for the Portuguese gambit. And we can go back to the Icelandic one, because Icelandic gambit is achieved in the similar fashion. However, white would have to be really greedy, and instead of playing d4, he would have to opt for the c4, trying to protect the pawn at all costs already. And now the move e6 is the introduction to the Icelandic gambit. What's the idea behind it? The idea is that whenever opponent says, okay, you can recapture the pawn, and he will play like d4 or knight c3, we are basically having a great position. No problems whatsoever, full equality, amazing stuff. But if he accepts, it might be even better practically for us, because after bishop e6, we will be trying to simply develop the knight, develop the bishop, the queen, castle long, or even castle short, and try to place the rooks on the open files. And the idea is that, okay, white has one more pawn, but it's the d pawn that we are blocking completely. And if that's the case, it will not be an advantage that might be used, it will be a weakness that we might try to hit. And this pawn will be actually limiting the opportunities for the opponent's pieces. So we will have far superior activity, initiative, all that stuff. So I would argue that this gambit is undervalued even at the higher levels, because it may cause some problems. I believe that when I was younger, I was met with it as white quite a few times, allowing me to dig deeper into it and try to find some refutation against it. But if I remember correctly, I was simply trying to develop very like passively and play moves like rook a2. So yeah, it was not that easy to deal with. So overall, I would say that the Icelandic Gambit offers some initiative and all that stuff. But would I put it into the surprise category? I'm not sure, because White will not be surprised, in the meaning that, okay, if he is surprised and he doesn't know what to do, he will be crushed. He will be just simply accepting our pawns, then trying to simply develop, and then acknowledging the fact that, okay, I am struggling. So I would say that Icelandic Gambit, opposed to the Portuguese one, it's a kind of real opening. So let's put it that way. And one more gambit in this family is the Kloosterboer gambit. I'm not sure how it's pronounced and where it's from. But the point is that Cluster Gambit starts already in here with already the move c6, which, to be honest, I don't quite understand for any player at any level. Because, like, okay, White can accept the pawn, so it is an additional pawn for what? For developing one piece? I mean, doesn't seem like a fair trade. So at the lower levels, it will be unsure how can you even make use of this initiative, because there is none. Like, White can simply develop, like castle, like what's the point? So yeah, overall, at the higher levels, it's even worse. So Clusterboer Gambit, I'm not sure what's for. However, I found a boosted version, because if you will play knight f6 and then c4 is played, not only Icelandic Gambit is the way to go, but you can try to play c6. And if now opponent takes and you take, it's a completely different story, because you basically have included the moves c4 and knight f6 onto the chessboard, which in here would obviously not happen at all ever. So if you consider this boosted version with knight f6 first and then c6, you can actually try it, and it's maybe even as good as the Icelandic Gambit, because instead of having the c pawn, you will have the e pawn, right? So considering this and that position, and this e pawn might be used to, grab some space in the center with e5 and all that stuff. So Kloosterboer Gambit, boosted version, is a quite powerful one. Obviously, one side note is that White is actually not allowed to take there. It's better for them to just simply play d4, and we are entering what? Pawn of attack in the Caro-Kann. So if you are a Caro-Kann player, you want to mix things up, or for example, you don't like the fact that, I don't know, your tournament opponent is playing like e5 advanced variation, or Fantasia, or any other, you might actually trick him into, making him think that you are playing Scandinavian, opting for this move, and if the c4 is on the board, c6 will either transpose, or you will get a very promising position. So yeah, I would say that Kloosterboer, if that's the name of the player that invented the gambit, could have done a better job. So thanks to the fact that there is one additional route to it, I would say that this gambit has something to offer. So maybe we can put it as the single trick, and I will put it even here, as high as there. Let me know what you think about it. Okay, we basically have ended e4 section, but we have two more openings to go through, which are threat defense. Yeah, that's that. So yeah, I even have threat gambit, as I can tell on the graphic, even though it's called defense for some reason. I am not sure if I want to get into any more details, because such gambit should not be existing, should not have any names. But with that, I want to share a story with you because when I was younger, around like 10 or 12 years old, together with my cousin, who is also a chess player, we opened up the opening book in which there were supposed to be all the openings, and we would have loved to invent our own one. So looking at all the options, there was, e5, d5, c5, all the normal moves were there, outside of f5. And it's a debate, between is it like actually a playable move or not? Perhaps not, but the point is it was not on our opening book. Therefore, we decided to call it with our names and try to, test it out and make some theory around it. So, unlike in the threat defense, we did not like the king f7 move. We were playing knight f6 move, trying to at least cover the h5 square. And if I remember correctly from those 15 years back, we believed that g4 is the only like hard refutation of the gambit, because our idea was to in general play against like d4 d5 and grab the pawn. You can get some playable position. One fun fact is that my cousin actually played this opening of ours against me in the rated tournament over the board, so kudos to him for doing that. He lost obviously, but yeah, my point is though that when I think about it now, I don't really remember what have we planned against bishop d3, like protecting the pawn. So yeah, overall not that great of a gambit, even though I must say that plenty of players online against me, because I chose to play my own opening, chose such line. And here you can basically like fight a little. Okay, you have the weakness, you have the weak square, but outside of such a bad gambit to get such a position, not that bad of an achievement. Nevertheless, when I have to evaluate both of those openings, gambits, threat gambit is obviously the worst I have ever seen in my life. My Karwo-Smal gambit, Karwo from my name, Smal from my cousin's name, I would put at the top of the nothing to offer list, just because of the sentiment, just because of the story behind it. I hope you liked it too. If you liked the story and the video, make sure to like it. Yeah. Okay, enough of that. Let's go back into the gambits. We will cover the Albin counter gambits. So as you may know, we are switching from one e4 to one d4, finally. Albin counter gambit is called like it because in here, as you may know, we have the queen's gambit from the opponent and we play against it with e5. What's the point? The point is that if the e3 will be played, so a move that indicates white was scared, we can take knight f6, and we actually got into the Icelandic gambit somehow, right? Because if you consider the Icelandic gambit in such manner, I've told you that if white is scared, we can achieve that playable position. So the same thing applies to the Albin counter gambit. But obviously we are here for the gambits, so accepting the pawns, no, not all the other stuff. So what's the point in here? The point is that we would like to play d4 and disrupt the white's pawn chain and get some space in the center. And we have some tricks. I believe that once more, if you dig deep enough to find my channel, you for sure have found some tricks on YouTube before, and one of those is against e3 move, in which we can try to deliver the check, take on e3, take on f2, with the attempted deflection of the king. The king is not deflected, it stays here, so we under promote to a knight with a check, so that after white takes, we play here, we win the queen and the game. So that's the trick. That's in the Albin counter gambit. However, if you go back here, e3 is obviously not the way to go for white. White has plenty more choices, much better ones. To start with a3, maybe, to like take away the b4 square for the bishop. And doesn't matter which variation will white choose. The dynamic is very often similar, meaning that you as black will be able to recapture the pawn, most likely. And even though you will achieve that, your position will be just worse, because in here of the space on the queen side, and also the pawn and then the bishop pair, wherever. I don't want to get into too much detail. Also, after knight f3 variation, opponent have even the possibility of trying to jump like that, saying, okay, you will not get the pawn back. So yeah, plenty of practical problems, and the upside to it is basically only this trick at the beginning. So it may work at the very low levels. At the higher ones, I would not recommend the Albin counter gambit, and for that reason, as of now, I will try to put it maybe at the bottom of the surprise weapon. Yeah, I mean, it's for sure better than Kloosterboer Gambit, so yeah, let's put it like that. And yeah, let's jump straight into the Budapest Gambit, because it's quite similar in a sense that we will be also sacrificing the e-pawn, but instead of playing d5, we will be playing knight f6 and only now e5. Once more trying to disrupt the white pawn chain, and the idea of Budapest Gambit is to jump to g4, hit the f2 and e5 pawns, so we should be able to get the pawn back, and if that's the case, we should be able to get a playable position. The problem is that it's not that big of a surprise for the opponents, because once more they can simply just accept the pawn, and in here there are not too many variations in which we can actually win the game as in the Albin counter gambit. They can just simply try to develop and protect the pawn, not even at all costs, just simply, making healthy moves. And we might end up in the position like this, which is actually the main line of the variation, in which later on we will have to introduce some ideas like a5 rook, a6 rook, g6 into the game, or something like that, if I remember correctly. Obviously we don't have to do it, but it's one of the options. And since that's the case, practicality of this gambit is not the highest, I would say, but it's kind of a normal opening because we are not a pawn down or anything, so it's just a type, the thing of preference. And not only that, if you are a hyper aggressive player, you might try to go to e4 as of now, because the knight in here seems trapped, so especially at the lower levels, f3 move might be a tempting one in order to try to get the knight for free, but the problem is obviously with the queen h4 move that we know from the puzzle rushes on chess.com for sure. Therefore, yeah, it has some upside to it, so Budapest Gambit is the gambit that I would say should be considered as a normal opening, real opening, but the reward will not be as high. So Icelandic one guarantees you an initiative and activity, Budapest one not really, so I will put it in here. Going forward with the knight f6 continuation and the other ideas that we might have in here, we can also have the Benko gambit, which is actually pretty normal gambit. How can we achieve that? By pushing the c-pawn first, and in here you may remember from the opening video that there is the Benoni defense possible, but in here we play b5, so hitting the pawn chain at the other square than the Benko gambit. The idea is that we want to deflect white pawns from the center, especially the c-pawn, in order to not really attack the center itself, but to be able to grow the initiative thanks to the fact that we gave away the b and a pawns for the opening of the b and a files. That's more or less the dynamic. It's quite hard though at the lower stages of chess to navigate it, because it's like you will not be attacking the king of white, you will be growing a long-term initiative on the queen side where there will be only white pawns most likely. So yeah, not that great at the lower levels, not that great either at the higher levels, because objectively I believe white should be able to get a better position. Nevertheless, it's a real opening. You can play without a pawn for the long period of the game and not feel it, because initiative is yours for the most part. Therefore, even though I myself don't like it as much, I know that it's quite a tempting opening. And to be honest, if I was white and I would go for d4, I would be met with Benko. I would be kind of scared, if I'm honest with you. So only because I don't like it personally, I will not put put it into legendary, but it's for sure a very real opening. Okay guys, 3 more to go. Blumenfeld counter gambit. What is that? Well, you may achieve it similarly to the Benko, but you start with e6, and then if knight on f3 is played, not knight on c3, I will discuss in a second why, you can try to use the Benko idea of c5 and then b5. So as you may know, as you may observe, we included additionally the knight f3 e6 moves, and it's actually quite beneficial to us because now we are pressurizing the white pawns from the two different sides, right? And the point of it all is that it has some surprise hidden to it, because you can actually make opponent think that you either mixed up the Benoni with Benko, or mixed up the move order, or you just played it out like that but it doesn't change a lot, while in reality it does change quite a lot. Because if your opponent accepts the trade on e6 and then takes pawn on b5, considering this position and considering like this position, it's completely different, because in here the white pawn, as I've said, was still allowing white to control the center. In here the center is kind of ours. So that's the practicality of this gambit. We can get better control over the center of the board at the cost of sacrificing a pawn and creating 1 versus 3 pawns on the queenside situation. But is it that bad as of now? Not yet. As of now, it's our job to put enough pressure to the opponent so that we will be the ones with the initiative and activity and all that stuff. And obviously that's just one exemplary variation. CB5 does not really work because you can take the pawn 2 in the center. There are plenty of other choices that will be sharpening up the position. For example, even e4 it's like Queen's Gambit met with Blumenfeld counter gambit met with e4 counter gambit. That's the dynamic. So yeah, a very rich position, this one, and as a surprise, it works amazingly even at the higher levels. I'm not sure when do you watch it, but if you watch the Tata Steel Masters tournament from 2025 from January, which was around 1 month before me recording, even Eric Gaisi, top 3, top 5 player in the world, chose it in the classical game against a very, very good player. So for sure playable, but I'm not sure if it's that great objectively. So as a surprise, I would say that it's better than Traxler. As an opening for a longer period of time, it's not as good as Budapest, because opponent might try to prepare against you. So yeah, if you're quite an advanced player, you may try it, especially for the shorter time controls, or as a surprise, you will not regret it. Okay, now we are going into the Englund's Gambit. That is one of the YouTube favorite once more, I would say, but I have to like change it because this is just a bad move. I know the tricks. I know the tricks. That is a newer one, which is this one, when you do oh no my knight and then you grab the queen. Okay, and I know the other one, which is more or less the main line of the England Gambit, which is queen b4 check with the double attack, queen d2 is kind of forced, and then you might be actually able to win the game like that. Or if the bishop d2 is played, you can take, and after bishop c3 as an attempt to protect the rook, you can play here and there and here, checkmate. Okay, I know this trick too, but it should not be playable at any level. I hope that enough of the lower rated guys watched this video as a white player so that they will not be losing like that, and they will be playing knight c3 in here with just simply ideas of grabbing the queen or whatever, winning the games and make the England Gambit disappear, because it's not worth it. So those are the two tricks. I know for a fact that may work even over the board. My friend at the Rapid or Blitz Junior Championship won such a game over the board. But come on, guys, don't do it. Don't do it. England Gambit is not that great. I will have to put it. Okay, let's do it at the single trick. Let's do it. I mean, okay, there is some trick, like half a trick there, half a trick there. It sums up to 1. Okay, let's do it that way. However, not willing to talk much about it. So let's switch the thinking completely. F4. Last gambit on our list. How in the world can you play a gambit against it? Well, immediately as of now, e5. Why? As always, you want to make use of the fact that the f-pawn has moved. Simple as that. So, considering that f4 is the bird opening that quite a few players choose, to be honest, with the idea of, trying to fight mostly for the dark squares around the center and avoiding a lot of fury, avoiding sharp lines and all that, playing e5 and trying to, make them go away from the opening repertoire, surprise them, get them out of their comfort zone might be actually a good try, because even objectively, this gambit is kind of a nice one, right? Evaluation is not that bad. Results are not that bad. The point of it all is that there are some tricks with the queen h4 involved, right? For example, knight c3, hello. We can do that, right? Obviously, white, if he is playing f4, should know that he is forced to develop this knight first, but still, we have some opportunities. So with that, I believe that From's Gambit, because that's the name of the gambit itself, allows you to surprise the opponent quite often, get them out of the comfort zone and get a playable position, open position, and you will learn a lot from such games, and perhaps you would not learn so much in such a closed one. So especially at the lower levels, From's Gambit is the very good weapon. At the higher levels, it still may work, but maybe in the shorter time controls. Yeah, where to put it? In order to get such a nicely looking, maybe tier list, let's put it that way, so I am balanced enough. So yeah, we have two clear winners, Martial Attack and the Yanish Gambit, both being played out in the Rui Lopez as black. So as you can tell, the best openings give you the best gambits. Other than that, you have plenty of choices, and I would advise you to look at real openings or surprise weapons, though don't go any lower than that. And yeah, that's that. I feel like I've done quite a lot of talking in this one, even though the gambits, there were not so many of them. So let me know if I talked too much or just enough or even too little for some of you. And yeah, let's give me some feedback, and I will be back for you guys in a few days with the gambits from White's perspective. As of now, thank you all for watching, and we'll see each other this week. Bye bye.